of the Chinese Communist Party. Here is Victor Gao, live and exclusive with Geeta Mohan.
A lot of layers when it comes to the Taiwan-China relations. What are the red lines over here that you think China considers having been breached, because of which we are seeing the kind of statements that are coming in from Beijing and the kind of mobilization that we're seeing through videos that have been put out?
Thank you very much for having me. You know for sure that Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States, who ranked at number 2 in line of succession, next only to the Vice President of the United States, visited Taiwan these couple of days, and China gave warning before her visit, asking her not to do the visit because it would be considered as a serious violation of the One China policy. Now, Nancy Pelosi made the trip despite of the counseling against it by US President Joe Biden, against the counseling of the US military. So this is serious stuff. She did not go to Taiwan as a tourist. She did not make all these meetings as an old grand lady in her own capacity. No, she was wearing the official hat. She was leading a large congressional delegation, and she was promoting Taiwanese independence. She was holding Taiwan out as an independent sovereign country, separate from China. This is the taboo of the taboo and the red line of the red line as far as China is concerned. So China is fully justified to feel very indignant about it, and the Chinese people are completely behind the Chinese government, because we want to achieve the national reunification. In the world, there is only one China, and Taiwan is part of China, and more than 181 countries in the world, including the United States, all the NATO members, all the EU members, all the OECD members, and great countries like India, for example, acknowledge that there is only one China. Taiwan is part of China, and the People's Republic of China is the sole legitimate representative of China. Sure, Nancy Pelosi classified as troublemaker in chief in the world.
We will talk about the Taiwan question, but going back to Nancy Pelosi and the visit itself. Now, while China considers this an absolute, the United States of America in many statements have come out to say that this is not a US administration visit, but it's a visit by the US House Speaker, and she does not take orders or she does not require permission from the administration or from the president. Isn't that a distinction that China or Beijing could also see, or Beijing is not going to draw a distinction between the administration and representatives of the House, congressmen, congresswomen, speaker visiting Taiwan?
No one can deny that Nancy Pelosi is the number 3 highest ranking US government official, even though her official title is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, that's for sure. But from the Chinese perspective, such a high-ranking official cannot be allowed to visit Taiwan. Otherwise, it will trigger huge consequences. So Nancy Pelosi disregarded China, disregarded Vice President Biden, disregarded the US Pentagon. She made the visit, so wait for the consequences which will unfold. I think the consequences will be several levels. One will be against Nancy Pelosi and her delegation and their families. They will be forbidden forever to do business with China, with China's Hong Kong, Macau, and after reunification with China's Taiwan province. Secondly, they will be prohibited from entering into China. We do not want to have any glimpse of these people, because they will be considered as completely illegitimate, because they want to separate Taiwan from China. They want to damage the Chinese national unity, China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Now, the other level of sanctions will be against the US government, because, you know, China-US cooperation on many matters of international importance, like climate change, you name it, will be important not only for China and the United States and for mankind as a whole. But US cannot have the cake and eat it. They let China down. They destroy the Chinese trust, if any, in the US government, and they need to suffer the consequences. And going forward, I think China and the United States will find it more difficult to get along with each other because Nancy Pelosi managed to destroy the trust between China and the United States as two countries, and the Chinese government and the US government as two governments. It will be rough riding going forward.
That's a very serious statement that you're making, that going forward from here on, US and China will certainly not see eye to eye on many issues, on many fronts, that the relationship has taken, there's a new low in the ties between the two countries. And the ties have already suffered in the recent past with the souring of relationship between China and the United States of America. But let me go back to the consequences. You've mentioned consequences to Nancy Pelosi, the delegation, their family members, so on and so forth. Let's just focus on the military and economic aspect, beginning with military. We're looking at exercises, announcements, which could lead to blockage of the port and shipping lanes in Taiwan. But is it all bluff and bluster? A lot of people are saying that China is talking a lot, but will not be walking the talk when it comes to action. Many said that even for Russia, when the Russia-Ukraine war began. But what is the military consequence of this visit?
Thank you very much. I think you are raising a very important question. Now, in 1950, before General MacArthur and his US troops marched across the Parallel 38, China officially gave warning to the United States not allow its troops to cross beyond Parallel 38. Otherwise, China will have no other option but to take action. And China relayed the message to the United States through the Indian ambassador to China. Can you believe it? And the United States and General MacArthur completely ignored. They concluded that China was in no position to put in a fight against the United States in North Korea. Then what happened? Lo and behold, the Chinese People's Volunteers pushed the American troops by several hundred kilometers way below Parallel 38. And General MacArthur, as a result, lost his job as one of the highest regarded US generals. And the US military has never suffered another defeat as miserable as this one. This was in 1950 to 1953. If you ask any US military officer, he will tell you for sure that the defeat in Korea has ever been carved into their psyche and the bones. Ever since then, the United States military always wanted to avoid a direct conflict with Chinese military. Now, China is fully committed to fight a war against the United States if it wants to stand in the way to prevent the Chinese national reunity. This is the strong message China is giving to the United States, and China will use whatever means available, including military means, to achieve the national reunification. So wait and see the consequences being unfolding as we speak.
Are we looking at a serious military action apart from the military operations and exercises in order to move forward for what China considers reunification? Is that going to happen? Is this the beginning of that?
Allow me to make several points. One is that the Chinese reunification is a megatrend in our times. And I hope Nancy Pelosi, 82 years old as of today, will live to see that being achieved before she passes away. Secondly, most of us alive, including all your audience, I hope, will live to see the achievement and realization of the Chinese national reunification. And Taiwan will be restored to her rightful position as one of the provinces of China. And the people in Taiwan, altogether 23 million of them, will again be rejoined with their brothers and sisters on China's mainland. This is the mega trend of our time. It will happen. It will happen either very soon or in a number of years. I hope it will happen through peaceful means. And if people in Taiwan or some forces in Taiwan want to stand in the way against this peaceful reunification, then non-peaceful means will have to be adopted to achieve this goal.
One more question. Taiwan considers all these statements that come from Beijing as bullying tactics, that China is trying to bully Taiwan to succumb to their wishes. And Taiwan is not going to do that anytime soon. It seems like Taiwan also has a lot of support, not just in terms of the statements, the visits, engagements, but also in terms of weapons, the technology, the systems that Taiwan has. So in many ways than one, Taiwan has the wherewithal, may not have the wherewithal to take on China alone, but if it has the wherewithal and the support of the other countries, allied nations, then how does China propose to take Taiwan on militarily?
Listen, don't underestimate the military might of China as a country, the whole Chinese nation as a people, and don't underestimate the determination and the capabilities of the Chinese Liberation Army. It is the Chinese Liberation Army in the form of the Chinese People's Volunteers who defeated the American troops in Korea, pushed them in several campaigns by more than 300 kilometers from Yalu River all the way down to parallel 38. No other country has ever done that. The former Soviet Union and Russia today, they have never fought a direct battle against the US troops. China did, the Chinese People's Liberation Army did. They succeeded in defeating the American troops. And I hope American soldiers and officers will never forget it because it's carved in their stone. The Chinese military and the American military should never fight a war against each other, because otherwise it will be Armageddon. So I don't believe when China and Taiwan are reunited into one single family, the United States will send troops to prevent that from happening, or British, Australian, Japanese, etc. These countries will send their troops to prevent that from happening. This is the destiny for the Chinese nation. This is the realization of the national rejuvenation and the national reunification for all Chinese people, including people in Taiwan. No country has any legitimacy in getting involved, and no country can achieve the goal of keeping Taiwan and China as two separated countries.
And joining me live now on the back of that big world exclusive with Victor Gao, just hours after Nancy Pelosi has left, the nuclear word being used, and very, very crucially, the fact that the reunification effort of Taiwan by China will now be hugely accelerated and will happen in a much more aggressive manner. Victor Gao speaking first and exclusive to India Today's Foreign Affairs editor Geeta Mohan. Geeta, mincing no words, Victor Gao saying that Nancy Pelosi has ruined relations between the United States and China, and also that the reunification, whether by military or other means, is most definitely going to happen in the next few years. Alarming statement there from Victor Gao.
Well, that's right, Shiv. One of the biggest statements coming in from Beijing, wherein China determined, not only with regards to reunification of Taiwan with mainland China, but Shiv, it's the nuclear alarm that certainly will raise concerns internationally. Now, United States of America can have all the warships at once, but when it comes to really acting on any action by China, they will have to think twice over, because the Chinese now are talking in terms of being nuclear and giving the example of Russia, that if Russia is nuclear, China is a bigger nuclear power, and so the United States of America should tread carefully. So important statement coming in, also mentioning that there are going to be repercussions, military repercussions, as also economic, which means that there is a lot in the coming days that we'll see between Taiwan and China play out in the Indo-Pacific region, in those waters, when it comes to the military activities, as also we could see some forward movement, not just military exercises, some forward movement on how they intend to reunify, so-called reunification of Taiwan with mainland China.
Gaurav, what are you making of what Victor Gao has just said in this interview to Geeta? Because anyone who's been looking for some immediate action, the fact that the military ball is now in China's court after the issuance of all those threats with those military drills taking place during Nancy Pelosi's visit, he says, don't be so impatient, wait and watch. We have time on our side, we have the region on our side, and we will act. He's basically saying, wait and watch.
Shiv, this is a threat. It's a huge threat, but it is a huge loss of face for Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Yeah.
Here is a man who's actually seeing himself as a global leader, a country that hopes to challenge the United States of America as a superpower in the next 20 to 30 years. And here is Nancy Pelosi, who actually visits Taiwan after China had warned United States, don't play with fire, you'll burn your hands or you'll burn yourself with it. Now, despite words like this, she visited. So Xi Jinping does look rather, painted in a corner. That's point one. Point two, the nuclear Armageddon threat is actually a threat to other European countries or other countries to back off and not get involved. Three, the response has already started. The cyber attacks have started. Economic sanctions are being put in place, and the threat that reunification will happen sooner than was earlier anticipated. So that 2049 threat no longer stands. It may be accelerated to the next 18 to 24 months. At the moment Xi Jinping gets re-elected for an unprecedented third term, they will accelerate. It's for the world to wake up and see what effective countermeasures, if at all, the world intends to take.
You know, Geeta, this is actually true because, in terms of perceptions, China is looking a little silly, to use a simple word here, because after all that, very, very high voltage threat, this aura of, ominous retaliatory action that China had threatened, nothing has happened immediately. That may be an oversimplification of expecting something immediate, but obviously, the words of Victor Gao should also be seen in the context of China basically trying to save a little bit of perceptional face and say, ye khel khatam nahi hua hai, abhi shuru hua hai. That's what he's saying.
Well, absolutely, Shiv. The fact that Victor Gao has said that China is nuclear and that United States of America should beware certainly is not just a threat to Taiwan, it is to the entire region. Now, whether if US is going to come to Taiwan's rescue is something we'll have to see, because I will hold myself back into saying that China has been rather silly or only bluff and bluster. Cannot be the case, because in all other matters they have not walked the talk. But Taiwan, Shiv, you and I have been covering this for years, is a red line. It is an area of great sensitivity, to the extent that US also is very careful when it comes to the issue of Taiwan. Look at the statements that have come from DC. Pelosi lands in Taiwan and Washington DC says, well, it's an unofficial visit. She does not represent the US government. She represents the House. She's just Speaker of the House. Third highest ranking government official meeting President of Taiwan as the Speaker can no longer be looked into as an unofficial visit. That's what China thinks. And so we'll have to wait and see how China is going to react to this. There certainly is going to be reaction. Movement, mobilization has begun. Even if it is threatening. Look, today the statement by PLA, Shiv, they said that they're going to block the ports and shipping lanes of Taiwan. That's serious.
Very, very serious. And once that begins to happen, war has its own momentum. Military operations have their own momentum. Geeta, thank you very much for that. National exclusive agenda-setting interview from the horse's mouth, straight from Beijing. First high-level response from China on the big visit of Nancy Pelosi. Let me show you about what Geeta is talking about and what Victor Gao has just signaled in that exclusive interview. It has already, viewer, begun to happen. It's not like it's something that's going to happen at a later stage. It has already begun to happen. Please take a look at what's happening around Taiwan right now. Starting tomorrow, the Chinese Navy and Air Force will be conducting a group of military drills, live firing drills, mind you, involving ship, stealth combat aircraft, destroyers, frigates, in an area that completely encircles Taiwan. It is not, these are scheduled exercises, but they're the locations have been tweaked in order to make it look intimidatory. Remember, this is very much part of China's sustained campaign of grey zone warfare. That is, sustained intimidatory military actions like drills around the island of Taiwan, which are short of an all-out attack, basically designed to wear out the Taiwanese military, to sort of grind down their own defenses and their stamina to actually be on war alert all the time. It's short of a blockade, but as you can see, with ships and aircraft completely surrounding Taiwan, it is scenario or step one towards a larger military escalation if that actually happens. Now, Nancy Pelosi's one-day visit to Taiwan, obviously, to put it very mildly, has not gone down well with China, as you just heard from the horse's mouth. Well, they've got aircraft buzzing in the air near the Taiwan Strait. They've got ships that are going to encircle Taiwan in the next few days as well. Taiwan's air defense zone is buzzing. Beijing sees Pelosi's visit as a direct threat to its authority over Taiwan. The Dragon did not even shy away from making comments that the US will be facing very serious consequences. Was all of this the Dragon's drama? Or will the tiny island off the coast of China be facing some serious brunt in the days ahead? Take a look. Nancy Pelosi, the number 3 in the US administration in Taiwan, a sight China cannot stomach or ignore. The US Speaker's one-day stay on the island, claimed by China, triggered angry reactions from Beijing, which threatened targeted military action. Just as Ms. Pelosi landed at the Songshan airport in Taipei, civil defense sirens went off in China. 21 Chinese military aircraft entered the Taiwan air defense zone multiple times. The People's Liberation Army started maritime and air drills in the South China Sea, surrounding Taiwan from almost all sides. The PLA tested conventional missiles and fired long-range artillery into the Taiwan Straits as part of these intended drills. China is clearly smarting after its repeated warnings, and even a last-minute dialogue between President Xi Jinping and President Joe Biden could not prevent Pelosi from landing in Taiwan. China has vowed retaliation and grave consequences to those who offended them. So, its Foreign Minister Wang Yi has declared that those who played with fire will perish by it. The Chinese Foreign Minister's statement is in line with earlier statements by the country's diplomats leading up to Pelosi's visit.
Recently, China has made it clear to the US on many occasions that it is firmly opposed to Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. We are fully prepared. If the US insists on going its own way, China will certainly take firm and forceful measures to safeguard its national sovereignty and territorial integrity, and the United States should be held responsible for any serious consequences.
China has also hit Taiwan with trade bans. It has stopped the import of 2,066 Taiwanese food items, including citrus fruit, fish products, and bakery goods. China has also suspended the export of natural sand to Taiwan. While it is really the US that's on China's radar, Taiwan may have to bear the brunt for now. Bureau Report, India Today. Now, an all-out invasion and all-out military action by China against Taiwan to capture it, to invade it, seems unlikely at present, despite the warnings coming in from China. But it is the very thing that Taiwan's entire existence and defense is basically preparing for, and has been for many, many years. I want to quickly just take you through a couple of scenarios of what such an escalation might look like, especially in light of what China has been warning. Remember, as we've just shown you, China has already begun step one. They've started their military drills to encircle the tiny island of Taiwan. China could possibly, if this escalates further, seize the Taiwanese island of Kinmen, which is just a few kilometers off the Chinese coast. That's another scenario being looked at. Remember, this is speculation, it's hypothetical, but it is seen in the realm of possibility if things spiral out of control. The third big attempt that would happen is an amphibious assault on Taiwan. This is seen by most experts as virtually impossible and one of the most difficult tasks to accomplish. But basically, if China needed to occupy and take back Taiwan, it would need to mount an amphibious assault on that tiny island. Basically, ships going onto the land to eject its troops to become an occupying force. Remember, at this point of time, if something like this should ever happen, Taiwan would continue to defend itself. It would reject all talks with China, as it always has. It has never said, we are willing to talk about the reunification. If this happens, once again, speculative, China would escalate this entire situation into a full, complete military blockade of Taiwan, basically cutting Taiwan completely off from the entire world. It would also activate a no-fly zone in this area, which basically means that any aircraft without authority flying into airspace around Taiwan runs the risk of being shot down by Chinese fighters. So a blockade of Taiwan would be the next escalation. China would then begin a big amphibious and airborne invasion. That's the actual ground and sea invasion of the island of Taiwan in an extreme situation. It will make a move to seize the island, take control of the entire island of Taiwan before the United States can reach. Taiwan would then reply by declaring total war and emergency, with its entire political leadership controlling both the politics and the war from a huge network of underground bunkers inside Taiwan. So that's what I wanted to give you, just a glimpse of what an escalating extreme situation would actually look like. Most experts agree that it's highly unlikely that such a situation would ever come about. But like I said, many experts are also unanimous that with China continuing to try and demonstrate action and painting itself into a corner, especially after Nancy Pelosi's visit, on the idea of reunification of Taiwan, the unpredictability of Beijing has set off alarm bells around the world. Now, from military drills to trade bans to jets flying very close to Taiwan, China has taken many measures against Taiwan already, just in the time that Nancy Pelosi has been on the island. Beijing will now be holding those joint military drills, including maritime and air force operations, all around the island of Taiwan, starting tomorrow for 3 whole days, and it will be using live ammunition, which is very, very dangerous at such close distances from the island. Using live ammunition, if something goes wrong, if something flies in the wrong direction, it could trigger a flashpoint. Take a look. China's military is in war mode over Taiwan, and we mean that literally. With Beijing's belligerent bluff being called out by the successful stopover in Taiwan by US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the military ball is now in China's court. And the country is doing everything it can to at least seem like it meant business. As declared shortly after Speaker Pelosi had arrived on Tuesday night in Taipei, China will kick off a series of live naval firing drills literally all around Taiwan starting tomorrow. China's Eastern Theater Command will hold these joint military operations around Taiwan with naval and air drills in the north, southwest and southeast of the island. The drills will involve Chinese Navy destroyers and frigates as well as combat aircraft. With live missiles and ammunition to be used, fears have escalated that even a tiny error could trigger a bigger flashpoint in the region. In fact, China has already begun long-range artillery firing in the Taiwan Strait and conventional missile test firing in sea regions east of the Taiwan island. The explicit muscle flexing by China is fully in keeping with the country's sustained grey zone campaign of intimidatory military tactics against Taiwan, short of an actual all-out attack. The Chinese drills are designed as psychological warfare, aimed at grinding down and wearing out Taiwan's defenses, imposing fatigue on its military and sensor networks. with China repeatedly warning of resolute military action and grave consequences for both the US and Taiwan for Pelosi's visit. The world waits to see what Beijing will do. Bureau Report, India Today. Okay, we've got big breaking news coming in right now on 5 Live. The National Herald office in central Delhi has been sealed by the Enforcement Directorate, is what India Today's reporters are hearing from the ground. This is a big move. The National Herald office, remember, was raided yesterday by the Enforcement Directorate. This followed the questioning of both Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi by the same agency a few days and weeks ago. And now the National Herald office, from where the National Herald newspaper publication was published from, has just been sealed, which means the Enforcement Directorate has found reason to continue its investigation following those raids. We're also given to believe that Sonia Gandhi... Okay, let's go across to Shreya Chatterjee for a moment to get an update on this. Shreya, Enforcement Directorate sealing the National Herald office in the money laundering investigation. Security has been stepped up outside the Congress headquarters also, we're hearing. What's going on? Give us the full update.
Well, yes, this is the recent development that is actually coming in from the Enforcement Directorate, who's been investigating the National Herald case. Now, what we do know that the National Herald office, which is the premises in the ITO, has now been officially sealed by the Enforcement Directorate. Subsequently, we also do know that security has been beefed up in Thames and Perth as well as the AICC headquarters. This has been followed after the questioning of both Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi in the matter. But subsequently, the news that is right now coming in is that of the National Herald office, which is being sealed. Remember, this is one of those properties that was owned by National Herald and also by AJL, that was then transferred to Young India Private Limited. The entire case, which is right now being investigated by the Enforcement Directorate.
Are the Gandhis or the Congress party likely to react on this? Shreya, are you hearing anything? We hear that security has been beefed up outside the Congress headquarters also. Why has that happened?
Well, Shiv, we've not yet gotten any reaction from the Gandhis, but we've seen Jairam Ramesh tweeting it out about the security being beefed up and questioning the Delhi police, saying that it's become a regular affair of the Delhi police to beef security outside the Congress headquarters. We're yet to get a confirmation from Delhi police on whether this was done under the directions of the agencies. But what we do understand that this has become a routine task whenever there is an action from the agency, given the fact that law and order in the New Delhi district is something that they have been securing whenever the ED has been taking action against the Gandhis, and especially in the National Herald case. Earlier also, during the questioning of Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi, we have seen how security was beefed up outside the Congress headquarters as well.
Okay, beefed up security outside the Congress headquarters after a big move by the Enforcement Directorate. Trouble appearing to be mounting for the Gandhi family. The National Herald office has been sealed by the Enforcement Directorate. Remember, the Gandhis and the Congress party at large have claimed that this is a political vendetta operation by the central government through the Enforcement Directorate. They claim that there is no wrongdoing in the National Herald case, and this is only being done to harass the opposition. But the Enforcement Directorate, which has recently received a big show of support and endorsement from the Supreme Court in response to many Congress petitions about the constitutional provisions of the ED, has now been empowered once again, and it is powering through with this high-profile investigation. A day after raiding the National Herald office, it has taken control of it. It has sealed the office. Nobody will be allowed entry into that office until the Enforcement Directorate unseals the office at this point of time. If Shreya continues to be with us, okay, Shreya's not with us. We are going to try and get a Congress reaction on this in just a moment, as also a government reaction. We're going to try and get Munish Pandey in on this. He tracks the Enforcement Directorate for India Today. Security has been stepped up outside the Congress headquarters. Remember, Rahul Gandhi is in Karnataka right now. He was there for Siddaramaia's 75th birthday bash, and he will be making his way back, if not already on his way back to Delhi. For now, he will be landing with this situation escalating quite a bit. The National Herald office is an office from where it was a corporate and publication office where the company was run from. It was a place where staff used to attend office on a daily basis, and that office has now been completely sealed. This is in a place called ITO in Delhi. For people not in Delhi watching India Today and are not familiar with the national capital, ITO is one of the most prime locations of Delhi. It's literally in the heart of the city, just a stone's throw from India Gate. The National Herald office has been sealed. The office of Young India Private Limited inside the National Herald office has been sealed. Okay, so it's not the entire National Herald office, it's the Young India Private Limited section of the National Herald office that has been sealed, is what we are told. Shreya Chatterjee back with an update. The important clarification coming in, Shreya. It's the Young India Private Limited part of the National Herald office which has apparently been sealed, Shreya.
Well, yes, Shiv, the information that we've received is that the office inside the National Herald House, this is not the entire premise that's been sealed. We know this is on the 4th floor where there's an office of Young India Private Limited which has been sealed by the Enforcement Directorate. We've also seen the visuals of the notice that's also been put outside that very office. Now, this is clearly coming after the investigation was ramped up by the Enforcement Directorate, where we saw that they questioned Rahul Gandhi for over 50 hours, and subsequently Sonia Gandhi was also called in for 4 days. And after that, we see that this is the investigation that has been taken in by the Enforcement Directorate, where they have sealed the Young India Private Limited office in the National Herald House. This is on the 4th floor, is what we do know. And simultaneously, we saw that security was also beefed up outside the AICC headquarters and 10 Janpad. This is an action that is following in after both the Gandhis were questioned by the agency in the National Herald case, because both of them were directors. And now we see that the Young India Private Limited office in the National Herald House has been sealed by the Enforcement Directorate.
Shreya, the sealing of an office, does that mean that something incriminating has been found inside? Is that the direct implication of sealing?
Well, yeah.
Stay with me, Shreya. We have with us a Congress Member of Parliament, Karti Chidambaram, who was one of the petitioners in the Supreme Court on the Enforcement Directorate issue. Karti, welcome. The Enforcement Directorate has sealed a part of the National Herald office. Your first reactions on that? They say that no unauthorized entry to a part of the National Herald office will be allowed until further investigation.
The brazenness of the Enforcement Directorate has no limits. They will stoop to any depths to harass political opponents. The National Herald is an iconic newspaper which is part of the freedom struggle. For the government to use its hatchet agency in order to settle political scores against the principal opposition party has now turned its ire on the National Herald. And I'm not surprised by the arbitrary act of the ED, which has now only been emboldened by the recent verdict in the Supreme Court. But this will play out. It will play out in the public arena, and I'm sure it will also play out in the legal arena in the days to come. And I am telling you today, the ED will one day face the same fate as the SS did after World War II.
Karti, any further legal actions that you are contemplating? You were one of the petitioners against the Enforcement Directorate recently. Any other legal actions you're considering that you're mentioning right now?
Sure. I'm sure there are many legal avenues. Those will be decided by senior counsel and by people far more experienced than me in the law. But all I can tell you is that this matter is not fully settled. The arbitrariness of the ED will be taken on. Politically, publicly, legally, it will be taken on. I mean, the Constitution of India will have to prevail. And I'm sure this is not the last we have heard of this issue.
One final question, Karti. Since the Congress party, the Gandhis have said there is absolutely nothing to hide. Everything has been completely above board. There's been no wrongdoing, and the methods used by the Enforcement Directorate have been selective and malified. why not just let the process, continue? Because if the ED is wrong, if the government is wrong, it'll be there for everyone to see. That's one perception also.
The process does not require summons for long hours. The process does not require raids. These are all transactions which are captured in the books of accounts which have been filed in the income tax returns. So the records would speak for themselves. If the government and its agencies believe that these transactions are not kosher or according to the law, they can simply file a prosecution complaint and go through the prosecution instead of having these theatrics of raids, summons, and now sealing. Please listen. Please understand. The process does not require this high-handedness of the ED at all. Because the records speak for themselves. If the government does not agree with what the record says, they might as well go ahead and move ahead with the prosecution in the courts.
Karthi Chidambaram, thanks for speaking to India Today. This is a live developing story. These are live images coming to you from inside the National Herald office, even as a part of it is being sealed right now. Live pictures only on India Today of the inside of the National Herald house. This is right outside the actual office. India Today's Arvind Ojha is going to be live with me in just a moment. He's right there on the ground. You saw his name. That was a Zoom connection. And we will be going to him in just a moment. He's inside. Our crime bureau chief is inside National Herald House, getting you these live pictures just after the entire location has been sealed. It's an unfolding story here. There are likely to be protests outside the National Herald House. Security has been beefed up here, as well as outside the Congress headquarters. And we cannot identify the people on your screen, but that is a security guard, of course, for National Herald House. They're not allowing journalists in, which is totally okay, because the Enforcement Directorate has sealed a part of it. Let's listen in.
हम तो हमारी ड्यूटी है, हम तो रोकेंगे सर। क्यों रोकेंगे आप? ऐसा क्या कर दिया? मिला हुआ ऑर्डर सर, क्या ऑर्डर मिला? मिलेंगे हम किसी नौकरी नहीं कर रहे, नौकरी इन लोगों की कर रहे हैं। अरे तो बताइए ना, बताइए हमें कंपनी बना कर रहे हैं, क्या वजह है? क्या वजह है? वो हमें जो ऑर्डर मिला ऐसा ऊपर जाने से मीडिया को क्यों रोक रहे हैं आप? ऐसे अधिकारी आए थे, क्या वहाँ नोटिस सबका कर गए?
Okay, a bit of a fracas there between journalists and the security at National Herald House immediately after the Enforcement Directorate has gone ahead and sealed a part of this corporate office of the National Herald. The Congress party is likely to see this as a major escalation. You've just heard Karthi Chidambaram saying that this is another act of total brazen vendetta by the Enforcement Directorate at the orders of the Modi government. That's what the Congress says is happening. And these are live pictures coming to you from the very site of where that sealing has taken place at this point of time. Shreya Chatterjee continues to be with us. I'm going to bring in Arvind Ojha in just a moment. In the middle of your screen there is the paper notice that has been pasted inside the National Herald office, barring any unauthorized entry until the Enforcement Directorate unseals that location. So it's the Young India Limited portion of the National Herald office that has been sealed at this point of time. We've got those live pictures coming in from inside National Herald House, and we will show you, try and get you some voices from people who are in that area in just a moment as well. Shreya, a bit of commotion inside the National Herald House. Is the sealing operation still on, or has the Enforcement Directorate left?
Well, what we do know, Shiv, that the Enforcement Directorate has already sealed the premise of the Young India Private Limited. It's on the 4th floor of the entire Herald House. What we've understood is it's not the entire house that's been sealed. It's only the Young India Private Limited office that has been sealed, and the ED officials, I believe, have already left after, putting that notice outside the Young India Private Limited office, saying that no one can enter the premise, or, they can't enter without intimating the Enforcement Directorate. That's what happens when an immovable property is seized by a law enforcement agency. And Enforcement Directorate has already sealed the Young India Private Limited office in the National Herald House, and that's exactly why probably we saw the security also being beefed outside AICC headquarters, because earlier also, when similar action was happening from the ED side, there were protests that happened from the Congress, and that's the reason to take in consideration the law and order in the New Delhi district, we saw that security beefed up simultaneously when ED was actually serving that notice of seizure while they sealed the office of the Young India Private Limited in the National Herald House, Shiv.
So it's been sealed. Has been no official reaction from the Congress party just yet. We've just spoken to Karti Chidambaram, Congress MP, one of the faces of the party fronting the political fight against, political and legal fight against the Enforcement Directorate and the powers that it has. The Congress party and several petitioners received pretty much a big setback from the Supreme Court, which upheld all of the provisions that had been challenged, giving the Enforcement Directorate the powers that it has and endorsing in many ways the methods and the powers that it has. But the Congress party says search and seizure of this kind, interrogation of long hours is not part of the process, and that's why it looks malified and part of a vendetta campaign to harass the Gandhis and the opposition in general. Remember, the Enforcement Directorate has been front and center across national headlines for many days now. Sanjay Raut in Maharashtra, the Gandhis in Delhi, Partho Chatterjee in Bengal. It's a pan-India Enforcement Directorate story spectrum. That India Today has broken every one of them is a separate matter, of course. But the fact is, India Today continues to be the only channel on the ground inside the National Herald office. Let's try and get some sound in from the ground.
That's the address of the Enforcement Directorate. So this has been directed by none other. Dekhiye, Kuldeep Singh, Assistant Director, Director of Enforcement. So Enforcement Directorate के द्वारा ये
From inside the Enforcement Directorate, I'm going to ask my producer to put the sound up because the man reading out from that notice is speaking on camera. Let's just listen into what he's saying.
नोटिस लगा है नोटिस लगा है तो हमारी वो नहीं सर नहीं आप बता दीजिए नोटिस लगा दिया है ईडी ने नोटिस लगाया है कुछ नहीं कोई नोटिस नहीं लगाया फिर इस तरह से रोक रहे हैं हम तो गार्ड है सर हम तो हमारी ड्यूटी है हम तो रोकेंगे सर क्यों रोकेंगे आप ऐसा क्या कर दिया मिला हुआ ऑर्डर सर क्या ऑर्डर मिला हम
That's not what I'm talking about. I want to talk, I want to refer to the notice that's been pasted there. The notice that's been pasted outside the Young India Limited section of that office. I want to read out what that signboard says. I want to read what that piece of paper says. It says, it is hereby ordered that the premises not be opened without prior permission from the Directorate of Enforcement, B Block, Pravartan Bhavan, Abdul Kalam Road, New Delhi, 11. It's signed by Kuldeep Singh, Assistant Director, Directorate of Enforcement. It has all the signatures there. That is the piece of paper, the kagas, under which the National Herald office or a portion of it stands completely sealed at this point of time. Congress, Member of Parliament, Nasir Hussain is with us. Congress Lok Sabha MP Manikam Tagore is also with us. He's been leading protests against the government, against the Enforcement Directorate and what they call misuse of powers by these central agencies. Mr. Tagore, the National Herald office or a portion of it has just been sealed by the Enforcement Directorate. Your reaction, sir?
The government's attitude and the arrogance towards the freedom of the organization called National Herald, which fought for freedom in the early 1930s and 40s. They wanted to show their anger now. Because these people who are now in power are with the product of RSS, who have been just doing the chaplaincy to the Britishers. Now they wanted to finish those legacy of National Herald, which sacrificed itself. Many of those people who founded it, one among them is Pandit Nehru. There are many leaders who formed it, National Herald. And National Herald is not as if it is running into profitable. It's not a profitable venture. It's a symbolic thing for a freedom movement, and Congress Party has always stood with National Herald in its toughest time. And using the ED, the government is trying to show that National Herald is a money-making venture. It's not like that. It's an organization which sacrificed itself for for freedom and stood for freedom movement. And we all feel that this government is misusing the ED, particularly in this affair.
Okay, the Congress has been protesting about precisely these kinds of actions. The interrogation of the Gandhis as well is something that had brought the Congress out onto the streets of Delhi in a very, very big way from all parts of the country. Nasir Hussain, Rajya Sabha MP from the Congress party, also live with us. All the big voices from the Congress, first and exclusive on India Today. Mr. Hussain, welcome. Your reactions to this next step that the Enforcement Directorate has taken, sir, the sealing of the National Herald office in Delhi.
The directors, including Mr. Rahul Gandhi and Srimati Sonia Gandhi, she has already cooperated with the ED for hours and hours of interrogation. They are not found anything in that. So it's because it is open and shut case. And the case is very clear that there's no money that has been laundered. There's no property that has been transferred in any individual's name. And the property are the shares that have been given to young Indians is all in the shares, not in property. And it is not for profit-making company. And nobody can either take money out of it or nobody can transfer any property out of it. This is only to humiliate. This is only to blackmail. This is only to discredit the Congress party and the leadership of the Congress party, especially the Gandhis. This is how the central government has been targeting not only the Congress party, but also the leaders of all opposition parties across the country.
Nasir Hussain and Manikam Tagore, thank you very much for speaking to India Today. I want to take you straight back live to the location of the National Herald office where India Today's Amit Bharadwaj is standing by. Amit, take us through what's happening right now. Is the sealing complete? How much of it has been sealed? What are you hearing from the ground?
Hello?
I'm going to try and connect to Amit Bharadwaj. I don't know if he can hear me because there's a bit of commotion there at the National Herald House in Delhi. Amit, if you can hear me, go ahead and tell me what's going on there with the sealing.
Well, Shiv, this is the National Herald's national headquarters right here. And what you see is that yesterday in the morning, the ED officials has reached National Herald headquarters 10 in the morning. And after that, hour-long raids were conducted at the National Herald office. The top floor of this building is from where the newspaper, which is also sort of a mouthpiece of the Congress party, the top floor of the building is where that newspaper runs. And yesterday, the ED officials has reached here 10 in the morning. And what we are learning from our sources that they were here up till 1:45 in the night. So clearly more than 14 hours of raid, 16 hours of raid was conducted at the National Herald office. And right now, as you would enter this particular building, the National Herald building, what you will see is that there is a notice that has been, stuck by, put up by the ED officials. And that notice has been put on the Young India lip right here. I'll ask Sanjeev to show you the visuals. This is the Young India nameplate that you see, 5A Herald House, the same building where the National Herald headquarters is located. And right there on the screen is the visual of the ED's notice. Just reading it out for the viewers, it is hereby ordered that this premises not be opened without prior permission of the ED Parvartan Bhavan, APJ Abdul Kalam Road. So the ED officials have put up a notice right here at the National Herald office, and nobody can enter the National Herald office without permission of the ED officials. This is the main entrance of the office, which has been locked by the ED
Amit,
officials.
we're staying with your visuals. I'm just going to go across for a moment. I'll come back to you. I'm just going to go across for a moment to Supriya Srinath, spokesperson of the Congress party. Supriya, the sealing of the National Herald House, a part of it involving Young India is taking place right now live on our television screens. Your reactions to this coming just after the raiding of that location?
It just tells you that the ED has descended itself into the extended election department of the Bharatiya Janata Party. It is no longer an autonomous agency. It also tells you that Mr. Modi is doing exactly what Mr. Savarkar did way back in the day. National Herald was one of India's shining examples and gave voices to our freedom fighters. By sealing the office of National Herald, or Young Indian for that matter, you are doing exactly what you did. The reality is that the recorded transactions of National Herald, of AJL, of Young Indian are all in the public domain. This is a recorded transaction. You have questioned the Congress president for 3 days. You have questioned the former Congress president for 50 hours. You still felt the need to raid and now seal. This is nothing but the worst political vendetta that this country has seen. And if you believe this is going to distract us from issues like price rise and unemployment, you really must be daydreaming, Mr. Modi, because these are issues that we will raise our voices on, come what may.
Supriya Srine, thanks very much for speaking to India Today. Let's take you straight back to the location where the sealing is taking place. Amit Bharadwaj continues to be with us. Amit, are the Enforcement Directorate officials still there, or is the sealing complete?
Shiv, what we can tell you from the ground zero is that the sealing of the National Herald office is complete, and the entrance of the National Herald office has been sealed by the ED officials. And nobody is allowed to enter this particular building. So what you see is there are 2 notices which has been put up by the by the ED officials right here, and there are tapes which has been put along with the notice to make sure that as and when anybody tries to open the gate, this notice will break, which will clear in violation of the laws of the ED. And now the security guards at the Herald House are trying to, asking the media personnel to step out of the office, because there are several other offices located in the National Herald building. And this is the ground floor where the some government offices also located, and the top floor of this National Herald building is where the National Herald Daily is located. One thing, Shiv, that needs to be noted here is that yesterday, 10 in the morning, the ED officials had reached here and had started their raid, and it went on for hours. And after that, around 6 in the evening, Malika Arjun Kharge and Pawan Bansal, who are also signatories of the board which runs the National Herald Daily, they had reached here. And speaking to India Today, Mr. Pawan Bansal had said that we had gone to check our office. So that was the one-liner response from Pawan Bansal yesterday while he had stepped out of the same stairs that you see crowded by the media personnel right now. And today, around 1:45 in the night, we were here till late in the night, and around 1:45 in the night, the ED officials had left. And what we see today is that there are 2 notices which has been put up by the ED officials, and the National Herald office has been sealed. So, Shiv, this is a big development in the Herald case. Now remember how Rahul Gandhi was questioned multiple times by the ED officials, and Congress party has been claiming that though that questioning had went up till 50 hours. And after that, Sonia Gandhi was questioned, and the sealing and the raid at the National Herald office by the ED comes after the questioning of the top leadership of the Congress party, of the Gandhi family, Rahul Gandhi, as well as Sonia Gandhi. So this is a big development that has just unfolded in the national capital, Shiv.
Amit, stay with me. I'm going to hand